these sessions are going to allow you to be more proactive and get the tools you need to be able to be an effective leader and also really manage your organization.
So are we seeing a diverse amount of people in the C-suite jobs and the CEO?
You have to be innovative. That's another thing that many companies are missing because we're stuck in the way we do things, the way that has worked for us. Welcome to another episode of Rise or Fall, the series by Act and Lead. And today we're going to be covering Facebook. And I know we're streaming on Facebook, but we're not going to bash them too much. We're just going to cover some of the gaps that we've seen and that we've researched. Today I'm joined by Miss Aisha Thomas, our leadership development and emotional intelligence strategist, professional, expert, all those things. How's it going, Aisha?
Hey guys, how y'all doing? Yes, we are talking about Facebook on Facebook, all right? But it's going to be good stuff.
Absolutely. And we're missing our third partner, Corey. He is out vacationing, living the life. So we just going to talk about him a little bit while he's not here. But Corey is our team engagement guru. So he is all about team building, all about employee engagement. That's our man. But we're going to hold it down without him. What we want to bring up right now is we're going to talk about, because we have, our small segment that goes over leadership in the news, and that's that current news update of what's going on out there. And today we're talking about AMC. Now, AMC is running out of cash, and they say by the end of this year, 2020, they will be out of cash completely. No more savings, no more backup. It'll be all over, and they may have to shut down if attendance doesn't approve or if they can't raise more funds. And so I'm going to just kick it off with my thought process on this, and then Aisha, you can jump right in. Now, as a business owner, as a leader, when you're in charge of an organization, we plan, and we've talked about that, and we've kind of beat that horse down. We talk about planning, we talk about strategy, we talk about future outlook. However, another thing that we need to think about that's just as important is making sure that your product or your service has multiple options. You can do different things with it. Of course, with a theater, they make their money based on ticket sales and products sold. So your snacks, your popcorn, your drinks, that's how they make their money. So when people can't physically come into that theater, they lose their revenue stream. And of course, they have tried to stream direct to Disney Plus, direct to cable, and you can purchase at a higher price movies that way. But you kind of lose that feel. You lose that I'm going out, I'm having this fun, and then of course they lose the snack revenue, which probably brings in much more than a ticket. So to me, and I know that their purpose was to provide that entertainment for us to come to that location, but now that we don't do that because of this season, they've run out of options. And really, they didn't run out of options. They had no other option in place. Aisha, what do you think about that?
Well, this is another example of the power of innovation. The reality is, yes, you can build your business and you can create your product and service based off of one season. But one of the things I always ask leaders, even with leaders, are your strategies, how you're doing things, is it something that's long lasting? Again, we don't get into entrepreneurship or ownership solely with the mindset of just being seasonal. So even when you're creating your product and service, you want to think about throughout the seasons, summer, spring, winter, fall, how do you pivot your business? Even for me, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, I'm a consultant. And I know that there's different seasons for different things. For instance, when I used to hit the schools very hard, I knew at some point school was going to end. So that means I could not speak in schools because there was a period where school was in and school was out. Okay, so then how do I pivot during the summertime? How do I pivot during the times when young people aren't in school? So you want to think about that as well. When you're coming up with a product and service, and again, you might be an emerging leader, you might be an emerging CEO. When you think about this thing, when you create something, I want you to ask that or reflect on that, and ask yourself, if something was to shift and change, could my product be utilized throughout every season? We know there's always a season for recession. Again, we get into business to be long term. So we know recessions are something that is the norm. We know there's going to be a political season. We know that there's going to be maybe some social unrest. We know that there's just things that are cyclical that are constantly happening. But my question is, when you have a business and service, do you have ways to pivot and navigate in case you couldn't go to your brick and mortar? And you had to solely depend on technological means to do that. So you always want to identify what is the new wave, what is the thing coming up, how can I utilize, things that connect to a different generation, because maybe your generation right now that's purchasing your products are millennials, but at some point the Gen Zs are going to be the buyers, and then so on. So you want to constantly be thinking about, is my business, is my product, my service, is it something that can evolve? And if it can't right now, how can I do that? And even when we think about AMC, I mean, they're doing things like, they're offering their space, you can rent it out. They're offering different things. They're trying to find ways to utilize that, but you're renting your space and no one is going to spaces.
That's good. That's good.
Rent out my space, but no, and again, people are, but you're renting out your space and no one's going to spaces. I'm sorry, Tyrus, go ahead.
That's good. And they tried to make a shift. They're trying to make a shift by renting out the entire theater for $99 up to $349, depending on the movie chosen and location. So up to 20 people in a group can rent out the entire theater to themselves. Now you're only going to watch one screen, but I guess that gives the more safety concerns. That gives you a little bit more peace of mind, knowing that it's only you and your close friends that'll be in that theater the entire time. Now, as we pivot from that, what do you think, Aisha? You know, I don't know if the theater industry will survive. If things don't change quickly, people aren't going back in droves. We're just not going to have enough people go back in order for them to replenish their coffers, so to speak, or to build their funds. And we saw this with almost similar with the circus. Circus went out of business, Barnum and Bailey, in 2017. And that's because the attendance went down, and then they still had high operating costs. And now they're gone. There's very few circuses that are still in place. I see the same with the theaters. I don't think that beyond this, they will be able to pivot. I don't think that they will make enough revenue to stream only, because they're still paying for the building. They got to pay for rent. They got to pay lights. All those things are maintenance costs that they got to carry, whether or not they get 100 people, 200, even 1,000,000 people to buy a movie for $29.99 direct to house. So do you think they will survive, or what do you think needs to happen as a business for them to weather this storm?
Well, I think there are a pool of people that are ready to get out. But as you said, it's with how everything is flowing and what's going on based off of, the data that's out, going back to, again, the previous normal is not going to be how things are. And you're right, they have this huge amount of space that they need to utilize. And it might be something where they have to downsize, or again, just let it go altogether and really start figuring out that in this space of, again, these technological means, how can we utilize or create packaging where we can still build revenue from the snacks, the popcorn, the candy, the soda, and also pivot where we can still, get the movies to come to our establishment, and that's the place that people go to have this experience. So it might be just coming up with a new way of, hey, the AMC movie package, and now it's something that's mailed to you. You get in and it has, the popcorn. And again, you used to see that at Blockbuster. I remember going to Blockbuster when you would go and you would order a movie, and then they started to have the snacks there. They started to have the thing with popcorn, and it had a snack, and they had this whole deal, and it might be creating something like that. And maybe by purchasing that, it also comes with, a movie from this limited amount, this limited pool here. Okay. If you buy the $20 package, you know that you can pick Mulan, you can pick The Equalizer, whatever, but it might be just coming up with a unique way to serve the customer that is now staying at home more often, serve the customer that is now not necessarily trusting on going outside. But the brick and mortar experience it's changing. And because it's changing, it might be just time to take a loss. I know a lot of companies, just like Ruby Tuesday, they filed bankruptcy. It doesn't mean that they're shutting down completely, but it might just mean that, listen, we're filing bankruptcy because we don't have to, there are things that you can do to pivot with utilizing things like bankruptcy and still be in business, just deciding that, let's start from scratch and let's start finding a new strategic way to go about connecting with the client or the customer that is now staying at home. And again, it's just finding unique ways to get them connected to AMC. What is it that you're going to do different from every other movie theater? What exclusivity are you going to have, as what Amazon recently did? Amazon recently partnered up, and what were they able to do? They were able to partner up, and now they're bringing a major movie coming to America. Everybody knows that is a classic in the African American community. But they invested the dollar. They knew the value of that movie. They knew that they will bring customers, and I'm pretty sure they're going to have strategic marketing around it. They brought them in, invested the dollars, and now you know that on Amazon, that might be the only place you're going to see coming to America. So people are going to purchase Amazon Prime. They're going to purchase. So again, it's coming up with ways to be able to pivot to serve the customer, add that unique component to it. Maybe there's a Marvel movie coming out, and it might be just saying, you know what, let's let go of the building and let's invest this dollar in this new Marvel movie that's coming out. So it's exclusively streamed from this AMC platform, just like Disney did with Mulan, and they're about to do with other movies that are coming out, and just start finding ways to be unique and different so you can grab people in a different way. So, and it also might include partnerships. Again, partnerships is the way to go. Maybe it's partnering with Amazon. Maybe Amazon and AMC can come together and create something and do something. And now, again, this is helping pivot in a way, because this might not be AMC's expertise, but maybe it's Amazon. Maybe it's another technological advanced company. And now, because you've come into a line, maybe it's even doing something with Apple. So partnerships, innovation, making sure you create something that stands out, and then really, again, coming together and deciding that, you know what, I'm going to let this go so I can gain this.
That's good. That's really good. So they need to innovate, pivot, and figure out, hey, maybe we just need a partnership in order to move on, move forward, and survive this thing. And I'm sure that they will revamp if they are able to come through and make some huge, huge changes. So let's pivot to Facebook. That's our rise or fall topic for today, our company that we're researching. And I'll
Well,
just,
now I want to know, do you think that AMC will rise or fall? Hi.
you know, I love going to the theater. What I have seen and what, my wife and I, what we like to do is have that more comfortable experience. So those theaters out there that appeal to more space, that are smaller, that give you more of that comfort row, unlimited popcorn, reclining seats, blankets, I believe those will survive because they just give you a better experience. I think the large 15 show in one building will go away. I don't think they'll ever be able to pull that many people back. I think slowly they're going to start just getting away from that. They're going to go to, I guess, more of a boutique type with higher customer service where we pay a little bit more for the ticket and we pay a little bit more to get those snacks. But hey, if you're getting drinks brought to you, if you're able to order food in there, and you have a great experience, I think that more people will pivot and go to those. So as we see theaters now, I think they will go away, and then more boutique, more customer service oriented, a better experience, those will rise.
I like that. Yes, I love going to those spaces. I remember it was in Colorado when I first had one of those experiences. I was on a military TDY, temporary duty, in Colorado, and that was a movie theater that I went to, and that was the first time I went. And they had the reclining chair. They brought, had menus. You can order food, and those experiences are so great. So I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And there's actually some movie theaters that I know out here in Texas that there's not as many theater rooms, but again, you have that experience. You can order food. It's just like the full bowl. You get dinner, a movie, snacks, and then, you get to be booed up for the night. Like, it's a great experience. So I think that is a great way to pivot. And I definitely agree that probably is what's going to stay in versus the, hey, we have 100 rooms in this movie theater, and that's just not going to be the wave. So that makes a lot of sense.
And we're trying to pack as many people in there at a time. It's just, we need to move smaller. We got to move differently. We have to be safer. People have to get confidence back that you're able to clean this place. There's no way that you can sanitize so many rooms between showings, and reducing the showings for a larger building like that will just hurt them. They'll be losing money. Even if they're bringing people in, they'll still be bleeding cash. So it's definitely that change is coming. Now, Facebook. I thought about Facebook for this topic because of watching Social Dilemma and understanding the ads and understanding how they capture our attention in
Tell
order.
the people about what Social Dilemma is about. It's such a great thing that you should definitely watch, not solely for education, but yeah, tell the people what Social Dilemma is first.
So, Social Dilemma is a documentary slash informational TV show, more like a movie. It's long enough to be a movie, where executives, developers, engineers that worked in your major social media companies that walked away from those companies and moved on to, different things in life, they come to talk about how our attention is being sold for ad revenue. And of course, if the saying goes, if you're not paying for a product, you're the product. So our attention is the product. And they have designed this. And I was going to hit this when we covered Facebook, but they have designed these tools, these apps, the social media platforms to capture our attention. Is everything is very intentional. The like button is designed in a way to make you click it and want to click it more. And what's great is that these tools bring us together. They connect us. They allow us to um, be a part of a larger community. We're able to see things. What is sometimes negative about this is they tailor the content to your likes and your preferences. So if you want to see something that is different from how you think or how you believe, it's very difficult to do that. When you search for, if I search for presidential race, they're going to show articles, comments, things. They're going to pull things that match my preference. So whether I'm a Democrat or a Republican, they're going to pull that information and then they're going to show me things that meet that to keep me attracted, that keep me there. And the very big part that I took away from Social Dilemma, and I'm sure you can let me know your takeaway as well, was in order to be open minded, these tools and apps make it very difficult in order to see the different side of the story. We see things the way we want to see it, and then it pigeonholes us, it boxes us in. So if I thought that Biden was not good for us and I keep searching that he's not good for, he's not good for, he's not good for us, everything that I see will start to be that negative influence that he's not good, and it will reinforce my bias. So we love to talk about biases. Social Dilemma showed us that our biases can be reinforced because it's only showing us what we want to see, what we agree with. And that's what's powerful about that show, is telling you that, hey, even the executives, they knew how the process worked and they were still having trouble with detaching, not being addicted, not checking your email, not checking social media. And it's sad for our young people because what they see is a false life or a falsehood. And it was talking about young girls who want to look like the Instagram filter. It's not real, but they want to look like that because that's what they see. And so teen suicide has increased. Sadness, depression has increased in our young generation because what they know is social media. My generation, if you were born in the late 80s, early 80s, late 80s, or early 90s, was the last generation where social media wasn't attached to your life. So we still remember a time where we didn't have Facebook, when it was brand new. This generation does not have that. This is what they see, this is what they believe. And we all know that you put on your best picture, you put on your best smile on social media because you want those likes. And the like button was created for people to connect. Now the like button is used to, am I doing enough? Am I right in life? And when people don't get enough likes, they get depressed. And that wasn't the intention.
Yeah, and I loved how they talked about it, how they compared it to like addiction. There was a breakdown that I believe it was Simon Sinek was talking about it, and he talked about how the way the brain is wired. I love to look at it from the brain perspective. That what's happening in social media, especially that dopamine sensor, a lot of people tap into utilizing drugs because if they're going through, say, a very tough time, the drug kind of kicks in that dopamine, that feel good feeling that happens in the brain. So again, if you've ever watched shows like Intervention, or if you ever hear stories about people who have drug addictions, they're trying to escape the pain of something that's going on. So now you have something that's giving you that quick push, and that like kind of like pushing you, and it's tapping into that dopamine center, and now you want it more and more to feel good. It's something you become addicted to. Well, social media has been unfortunately the same thing is happening within the brain. By seeing those likes, by seeing that people are commenting, it kicks into that dopamine sensor, and now people are fiending for it. They want it. So it's another aspect of addiction. It becomes an addiction, and people are fueled by it. Well, now the reality is, again, the mission statement of Facebook: give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. But if you think about it, essentially they realize that we can monetize this thing. So if your social media feed is being catered based off of what you're watching on a regular basis, and maybe you're someone that has a different kind of belief compared to someone else, and now you're being fueled with things that might be pretty much just divisive. Now you're going from, hey, a place that brings the world closer together, but it's really separating them. And again, if we're not taking time and we aren't checking ourselves, and we don't have that level of awareness to know that we essentially have control of how we shape our lives, how we see things, then unfortunately we're going to be pulled into that. And now you find yourself addicted. You find yourself waking up in the morning, the first thing you do is check that. I have to check myself because I have this process where I already know in my fingers, I wake up, I have my routine, I'll go to the Bible app. So my like automatically do my little devotional. And then the next thing I'm going to do is check my email. The next thing I'm doing is going to Facebook because I typically post in the morning. Then I go to Instagram, I put something in my story. So I have these patterns that I do that now I'm wired to do so. But again, there are times and seasons where it's time to disconnect. Even when you go out to restaurants and you see people walk like talking, or not talking, because they're not talking. They're just on their phones. And I have that awareness to know, listen, if we're out on dinner, if we are here to connect, friends, if you're in a relationship, whatever it is, I'm going to put my phone away. But again, we're talking about building community and bringing the world closer together. But again, we've seen that with everything going on in the world. And if you're being fueled with things that might be divisive, then it's not really bringing it together. So I think that is a level of awareness that we need to have to know that every level of marketing that you see, there's a strategy for you to buy every single thing, right? And I know that this message is for leaders and it's for business leaders, and essentially we have to market and we have to draw people in as well. But we have to realize, even as a consumer, everything that we do is a psychological game with it, or a psychological piece that's attached to it. That's why you might see certain commercials that's going to touch your heart. It's going to make you want to donate. That's why you're going to see certain things that you're going to watch and you're like, man, I'm hungry. That's why you're going to watch certain things and it's going to be like, man, I need to buy that outfit. Everything is psychological. So we have to remember, as a consumer and also as the marketer, that there's a psychological component to it. But now, when does it get to the point where that psychological component to it becomes more manipulative? I can't even say manipulative. Okay. When does it turn into that? Because once it turns into that, then you have to start looking at the integrity and the values of your business practices. So I think that's the balance there, and trying to find out, when am I becoming more of that business leader that has created something that is becoming, where it's swaying people. And now it's not necessary. You're seeing the suicide rates go up. You're seeing that it's having negative effects. What do you do when your marketing pivots and it's having an effect that you might be like, I didn't know that by putting on women on this ad that are a certain weight, they have a certain type of body shape. I didn't realize that it will start to cause this much psychological issues in young people or young women. So that's what we have to weigh as business leaders, because again, we are in this business too. When does it get to the point where we need to make sure that we have a balance, where it's not pivoting more into negative effects than positive? And yes, it might result in dollar, but then it might result to people losing their lives or other issues.
Yeah, and that's where, this past week we talked about on our Thursday night live question and A for business and leaders, where we talked about being business minded and being an actual entrepreneur or business owner versus just an operator. And when you're an operator, and I understand the pushback against going to college and getting a degree and having information. However, here is where, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg, we know he went to college. We know he dropped out. We know Bill Gates dropped out. We know a lot of these billionaires that created these products didn't finish college. But what you don't know is, even though they didn't, most of those people who actually create these things, they went to college. They have high level degrees in engineering and psychology. Stanford, they have so many Silicon Valley entrepreneurs come through to take behavioral economics courses, to take psychology courses. So their engineers go through that. They have an engineering psychology course. And what it teaches them is how to, as Aisha talked about, manipulate or nudge. This is the professional word, what they like to use, to nudge the user to push them in a certain direction. So, for instance, if I wanted to get you to buy a product at a specific price, and you might say, well, that price is too high, this one's too low. What I can do is shift the pricing to fit you, but I might not change the product, or I might not give you more. And you will buy it because you think you're getting a deal, but I really manipulated the process and worked it out in my favor. So when we as business owners and leaders decide that, hey, I can run a business without going to college or without gaining some type of other information, you're missing a whole lot that's out there, because your major corporations and industries, even if the leadership say that they didn't go to college, they surround themselves by people who did. And those are the people who are actually in control of these products. Facebook doesn't give engineering jobs to people who don't have engineering degrees. Their high level people are all educated in their specific field to work these out. Now, Facebook mission statement, Aisha gave it to you. Give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Give people a voice, build connection and community, serve everyone, keep people safe and protect privacy. Now, this and promote economic opportunity. So the things that I picked up on with the whole rise or fall and where Facebook is getting that negativity is, for them to say they're bringing community together. Aisha talked about it. There's a lot of divisiveness on social media, and what they have decided to do was monitor and auto delete certain things, but not others. So then that lends the question of, okay, if I'm a specific nationality, if I have a specific economic status, I can let my stuff and my hate still go through. My divisiveness post will still be put up. But if I'm a different nationality, maybe Middle Eastern, maybe something else, they will not only delete, but they'll censor my voice. And so there were, I think it was, I can't remember what dictator it was, but he uses Facebook, and just, you have to have Facebook in their country. Like if you get a smartphone, they preload their version of Facebook with all of his rhetoric on it. And that caused a lot of hatred against their minority Muslims in that country. They were killed, they were attacked, and all because of the rhetoric that Facebook allowed. So what is Facebook's responsibility? If they are for promoting peace and togetherness, what is their true responsibility? Are they really protecting people, or are they protecting their pockets? And for those people that did leave Facebook, that helped engineer and build this, they said the same thing. When things started going south, as far as the like button and what people are using it for, and the depression, the rises, they published a memo, but nothing changed. So why isn't Facebook taking more of a stance outside of just words and actually putting these things in place? I don't see many advertisements or commercials that come up and say, "Hey, we know that it's great to be a part of Facebook, but remember that everything on here that you might see is not real, and that your life should be from internal to external." and that everyone has beauty. Everyone has this. Why are there more positive things versus I'm just going to show you what you want to see and allow you to bury yourself in the hole? Aisha, what is your take on that?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. You are dealing with a group of people that want to have a freedom of, expression. So you have a big group of consumers that Facebook has that says, listen, we want to be able to speak our minds, say what we want. And then you have another group of people that's saying, that shouldn't be, these certain messages should not be able to be talked about because they're divisive, right? And then there's that in between part, because you can say maybe on, one thing's like, I guess the freedom of speech is in the eyes of the beholder, right? Because I could post something that I don't feel is divisive, and someone might be like, "Oh my gosh, what you put on there is just wrong. I don't like how you said this. You're excluding these individuals." And someone else can do the same thing. So I think what Facebook is running into, as many leaders will run into, is you have two sets of consumers, or maybe even three people that's like, I don't care. I know that, whatever they say, it doesn't bother me. So you have these three groups of individuals that I don't care people. It shouldn't be on there. We should have freedom of speech, and trying to balance that when it's essentially supposed to be a place where people can hop on and, and pretty much have expression and connect with one another and so on. Because who knows, certain communities are communities where they have a certain type of beliefs. That's a certain community. So again, it's really one of those things where when you're developing your business, or you're developing your ethos or your values of a company, you really want to identify, really say, what are we truly going to stand for? What are we truly like? What customers are we truly trying to attract? And I think that, again, you can have businesses, or you can have something that you create that started one way and then things spiral. And then you find yourself in a situation where you're like, what do we do? Because if we do this, we're shutting out this group of people. If we do this, we're shutting out this group of people. And if we do this, then we're shutting out a group of people. And then, of course, you have the money aspect of it, that they're wondering like, okay, we need to build revenue. Like, this is a whole business. We've employed millions of people, or hundreds and thousands of people, or thousands of people. And now we have those people that we're responsible for. So I think what Facebook is running into is just like one of those situations where it's like a bunch of things going on at one time. The other aspect is, how is their system built in the background to be able to really weed through all of those millions and millions of posts, billions of posts that are happening on a regular basis, to identify what's divisive, what is not? Do they have a system and the capability to do that? That's a massive thing, right? To find keywords. But then if this keyword is in there, like, say, for instance, let's say the N word, right? Say that's a keyword, and we're saying everything with that is going to be taken away. However, somebody might use that word in like, hey, whatever, and it turns into something where, okay, now you deleted it, but I wasn't using it in that context. I was using it as a greeting. So it's like, how is their system set up where they can identify that when someone says this word, or there's someone says, something that's a word that might be offensive to someone within the LGBTQ plus community, or someone that's offensive to the white community, or the Black community, or the Asian community, what it actually means. I'm wondering how they have that set up. And from what they're trying to fix or identify or remedy is that they don't necessarily, this is one of those situations where it blew up faster than they expected. Things came up faster than they expected. And again, there's that other responsibility factor, because it's like, these are still individuals who are deciding to make these posts. Right. These are still people behind it. So really, it's the people that are making these posts that are truly the ones responsible. Like, they shouldn't be putting that stuff on there. But essentially, as a business leader, as a leader, as someone that has a team and you have an organization, essentially, even for yourself, when you're creating that, you really want to make sure that whatever your values are, you really want to map that out and identify what will we allow and what will we not. And yes, Facebook has the power to essentially say, from here on, this is what we're only going to cater to this population, point blank, period. And they can pivot that way. But again, you have money, you have dollars, you have investors that are involved. And it's gotten to the point where I think that they're in a big, in a big conniption when they're trying to figure out what to do because of the various players that are a part of this. And it's one of those things where it's like, I can empathize with them because that's a lot, yeah. But then I can see the other human component of it. And if it never changes, essentially as a consumer, essentially as the CEO, as the leader that's putting information out there, you still need to have a level of responsibility and awareness to know how your messaging and what you're putting out there is harming or helping people. So I think that's really what we want to really consider is, if this never changes and we are on a platform where it essentially says, hey, what if they decide to say everybody has freedom of speech, say whatever, then what are you going to do as a leader? What are you going to do as a CEO to make sure that you stand out in a way that's going to be positive for your consumer?
That's good. And to your point, when you talk about, is it too big? Can they handle it? Can they get rid of the information? In Social Dilemma, the guy said that the algorithms that the system uses are so complex and they're ever evolving to where there's only a handful of people that know how they work and they don't know everything. So this thing now is growing in AI, the artificial intelligence piece is growing to a point to where no one person knows every single thing about how the algorithms truly work. So now it's really getting out of their hands. And then I have another quote by Rashad Robinson that said, it's possible that Facebook, which owns Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger, has more than 3 billion monthly users, is so big that its content can no longer be effectively moderated. So if they don't know how the algorithm works, if they're getting too big, maybe they have lost control and they can only moderate certain things or certain pieces. He also pointed out, though, and this goes back to the point I was making, how they choose what to moderate. He pointed out that they consistently remove recruitment propaganda by ISIS and other Islamic groups, but has been far less aggressive in cracking down on white supremacist groups. So the question that he asked was, should Facebook do more or less? That isn't the right question, but how is Facebook enforcing its rules that it does have, and who is set up to benefit from that? So we're looking at it again. Who's buying or who's spending money for ad space? Who controls it? And who's benefiting from what posts are getting allowed? And I think that's something that Facebook has to think about internally. I know that if with privacy, with communications, if things get dangerous, if they allow things to happen and they could have prevented it, our government will step in and they will start to crack down. And I know Mark Zuckerberg has been sitting in front of the Senate panels a few times quite recently to answer those questions. So let's pivot a little bit from that, because that's the user side, that's the ad space side, and we covered that in depth. But now, for businesses, there's another thing that you learn when you go through a business program or take some business classes, and you start to discuss business ethics, ethical business solution, ethical decision making, all of those things. Now, Facebook is about to face a possible antitrust lawsuit from the Federal Trade Commission. And what they're talking about is that, of course, we know that Facebook bought IG, they bought WhatsApp, they control most of the social media apps now, all the ones that are majorly used. And when they purchased IG, they did it in a sense of, okay, IG is struggling, they are gonna end up crashing and going out of business, so we're gonna purchase them and bring them into our fold and revive that company. Now, what has come out was IG wasn't struggling. IG was growing. IG was just fine. Now that lends government eyes to say that, okay, are you trying to create a monopoly in this business? Are you trying to control all the pieces, which is a huge no-no? So Aisha, what do you think about that? Knowing the tools, knowing the social media apps, knowing their usage, is Facebook really attempting to create a monopoly, or are they just trying to save companies that were going out of business anyway?
I mean, this is another tough one, because it's like, when you become the top dog, how do you stay there?
Mm.
You know, when you have created something and you want to stay relevant, you want to stay at the top, you want to be the go-to, how do you stay there? And again, we talk a lot about partnerships. Partnerships are great. We want to be partners. We want it where if somebody Google searches our, they need certain products and services, we want our name to always pop up. We want people to come there. And I think that overall, like from the from the governmental perspective, they're trying to, of course, consider everyone else, because from that, from that world, or that, excuse me, national management, it's like, we know we have other businesses, we have all these other individuals that also, want to create businesses and they want to thrive. And if Facebook is becoming like this leader and they're starting to buy up everybody, and they're pretty much are going to be like, the big like king, or the big chess piece within that always just like knocks down, or they're always like Monopoly game. You're always buying all the properties, and it's kind of like everywhere you land, you got to pay a fee. Like, okay, if I go to Instagram, I'm gonna see Facebook. If I go to TikTok, I'm gonna see Facebook. If I go here, like if it turns into that, then it's strategic, 'cause that's what you want.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, if you're thinking about a agency, like I said, if you're talking about government who essentially wants everybody to thrive, then yes, I can see how they can have an aspect, like they can be bothered by it, because again, now you might be taking over to the point where other people who have ideas they can't get in the door, or if they try to get in the door, they got to give you money, or they have to do something to get their foot in the door. So from their perspective, I can understand how that can be frustrated, but from the business and the leader perspective, it's kind of like that's what people strive for. You want to be the go-to person. You want to be the thing that people deal with. So if I could partner and buy up, and I could partner with all these organizations, all these other entities, and take over, I can't knock the hustle. I can't knock the hustle. So again, those are two perspectives that I understand both sides. I can see why both sides, because again, you have other people who have ideas and great platforms that people could utilize. But then I can see how when someone creates something and they're like, I want to be the best leader in the organization. I want to be the best company in the nation, where people are coming to me for all of the products and services. And yes, it might become overwhelming for me at some point, and maybe I do need to pass it on, but I'd rather be partnered up with people I can pass things to, rather than just be number three. Like, I can understand why Facebook wants to stay number one. So I can't knock them. But then the government has their responsibility to make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. So play on, player.
That's an interesting perspective. That's a great perspective on it, because why we don't like monopolies is it stifles competition, and it really, unless the company's doing all the innovating, it takes away innovation. It takes away consumer choice. Because imagine if Verizon was the only cable internet provider in the nation. There's nothing stopping them from raising their prices 10 times. And people that can afford it, and even if they don't want to, they will have to. It's a necessity now. And what happens is, if Facebook is able to snap up all of these other smaller companies and roll them into one, Facebook has been flirting with the idea of charging for Facebook Premium. One day that might come down the pipeline. And if they control all the major social media apps, and you're saying, hey, I don't want to pay for it, well, you don't get everything else. You lose your IG, you lose your WhatsApp, you lose the VR that they're in, that portion of it. So when you think about it, of course I would want somebody to step in and say, hey, look, let people have choices. If you want to roll this in, and we see it with YouTube. YouTube has started to do the YouTube Premium, and you can get channels, and you can eliminate ads. And now, that's a model, because they make money on ad space. And if they get rid of ads, they got to make money somewhere else. And at that point, you're no longer the product. You have to pay for the product. And so Facebook has been with the idea of going into a Facebook Premium, where you don't see as many ads and you pay a monthly fee. Then you become a user and not not a product. Something in Social Dilemma that just keeps popping my mind up. They said they only call two instances where people are called users. And that's when you're on social media and when you're addicted to drugs. Think about that addiction. Are you addicted to social media? Are you addicted to this product so much so that it has took control of your life? And how does this relate to business? As a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a owner, is your product negatively impacting people where they're addicted to it? Yes, it's great for you because you're getting sales, but are you looking at the greater good? And this is where the ethical parts of business come in. Just because I can sell a product and it's legal, is it ethical? Is it right? And I swear those scenarios that I used to have to go through in class, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this is, it sounds right, but some things just aren't right. And for Facebook to continue to capitalize, and I know people are out there saying, man, you guys are using Facebook for your platform, you're using it, but even though we use a product, products aren't perfect, and they still have gaps, and those things can be closed, they can be made better. And this is what we want to do. We want to make Facebook better. We want Facebook, we want Mark, we want their leadership team to hear, okay, these are the changes that can be made so our product can really live up to our mission statement. Or else don't put a mission statement out there. Don't put something out there that you're not willing to stand by. So to tie this into a new business, if you're starting a business and you come up with a great, I mean, your mission statement is fire, your vision is just off the chain, live by it. Really, really think about what you're saying in words and push that to your consumer, those who you serve, because businesses really serve individuals. They're not all about profit all the time. One of the questions I had was, did Facebook purchase IG under false pretenses? We don't really know. I mean, the investigation will have to go, it'll have to come out, and then we will be able to decide once all the evidence is seen how they really made their moves. What lessons, Aisha, can we learn from a large company like Facebook and their current issues in the news? What can we take from this, and how can we use this information to make our businesses better, to lead better in our organizations, to lead better in the C-suite, or if we're emerging entrepreneurs, to start on a great foundation. That way we're not having to close gaps all throughout our business life.
I mean, I think one of the recurring themes in what we're talking about is consumer impact. How often are we assessing the consumer impact of our product and service? Of course, with me, one of the things I do on a regular basis is I'm constantly collecting feedback. I'm always asking or sending something to my clients to ask, what was your experience like? Can you leave me feedback? And if we have follow-on calls for our consultations or for our coaching sessions, one of the questions before they make their next appointment is, how was the last session? Was it clear? Was the homework assignment clear? Because I always have homework. So I ask those questions because, again, I want to ensure that I'm headed in the right direction. I want to know if I need to tweak certain things. So if you are a leader out there, how often are you hosting your own roast? That's something that I call a process that a lot of leaders out there need to do. How often are you collecting feedback from your team members to make sure that you are doing your part, so you can identify if you need to pivot and how you connect with your team members, engage with them, so you can find out what's working within the organization? Because the other aspect of leading is, yes, there's an engagement part, but also to the nooks and the nooks and crannies of the technical part, making sure that your team members have the resources they need to do their job effectively, making sure that they have they can have a place where they can vent, or they can have that work-life balance. There's so many different components that we need to be assessing as leaders. So what is the customer impact? And again, we're talking about from the consumer perspective, but again, even the individuals that work there, because one of the things that they talked about on The Social Dilemma is, again, you have these people who were a part of the creation of these that also started to deal with a lot of they started to get a gut check, and started to, the heart started to be pricked for them to identify if, what if what we're doing is turned into something that I didn't expect it to be. So again, it's always identifying what are ways that you can ensure, as a leader within an organization that's trying to get to the executive C-suite, or maybe you're there now, or even if you're a CEO, or someone that's an emerging entrepreneur, what systems and what kind of things can you create where you're constantly really assessing customer impact, so you can make sure that you are headed in the right direction. And the reality is, the unfortunate thing is that we can't necessarily control how somebody responds to something that you do. You can't control if someone decides to post something divisive or negative that could be really hurtful to other people. But what you can control is what you can't control. You can still make sure that you can, do those assessments and identify what you can do to do better. Instagram did some great things in regards to like bullying, where you can pretty much, if someone reaches out to you, you can pretty much not unfollow them, but you can block them, and they won't even know, because they knew that if a young person blocked someone and they were notified they were blocked, that could intensify the bullying. So things like that. They started to put out messaging. They took away the how many likes people have. And some of them you can still see, because of course with IG, no, you can see how many views it has, but they started to move away of it specifically saying how many likes you have. You see like the little bubbles of the faces, but you don't know, it might be a bunch of people. But they implemented things where they're saying, okay, this is what we control. So at least let's make these fixes to try to remedy these issues. So again, if there's social issues, if their consumers being impacted in a certain way, what messaging can you put out there? Just as we see that what happened with George Floyd, what's happening with Breonna Taylor, you saw that. What did they do? What they can control within their companies, places like Amazon, places like Instagram, places like TikTok, like all these other businesses decided to put out messaging, to put something out to their team members to say, okay, we're bothered by this, it was wrong, and so on and so on. So control what you can. Know that you can't control everything that happens on the outside, and also make sure that you're doing your part to do a customer assessment. How is it impacting your customers internally, meaning your shareholders, your stakeholders, the people that work for you, but also identifying how it's affecting your consumers that are external, the ones that you're trying to gravitate to work for you, to purchase your product and service. Because by having that, you can at least know how you can pivot and navigate to make sure that you can do what you can at the level you are to try to remedy those issues.
That's good. And just piggybacking off of that, using those organizational health checks like the ones we offer will let you gain or help you gain an understanding of what your employees are thinking, the people that work in your companies, because Social Dilemma was really birthed by people that left companies because their ideas, things that they started to think about, those conversations didn't go anywhere. And that's the whole issue with Facebook now, is that more and more people are saying, you know what, we're talking about this, we're telling this, we're mentioning this, but those things aren't going anywhere. So when we think about that, why? Is Facebook really doing everything they can do? Or are they still just running ad space? Make sure I capture your attention long enough so I can put this ad that you would probably like. And then that person that is running the ad can pay me for it. And then we can continue to be a $1 billion company that we are and move forward. And if you are in need of that assessment, if you are in need of understanding how you can make better decisions with your business, how you can make changes. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but there's ample resources out there to figure it out. Every Thursday night, we host a live Q&A for business leaders, entrepreneurs. Even if you are in just a leadership position, you're an employee, but you're in that C-suite or in that leadership role, you can join us on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. There is on our page, there's a link to register, and you can come in and get those questions answered live, and it's free. We're giving you free game, how to take your business to the next level, how to take your employee engagement to the next level, how to just understand what type of leader you are. And here's a question I didn't think about earlier, but I want to throw it to Aisha. Just off of what you know about Mark Zuckerberg, where do you see him falling on the DISC assessment, his superpower?
He's definitely an introvert. He's definitely an introvert. I would definitely, hmm, I'm feeling, I'm leaning towards possibly the S spectrum. That process driven person, but also the other side of high S's is that when change is happening, when things like are shifting and changing, it can become a bit overwhelming. And they might cause they might not be able to necessarily navigate those changes. And of course, in the adaptive, they can pick up the pace, but if they're picking up the pace, how does that look in regards to their C? How does it look in regards to the other components? And is that shifting in a positive side or the negative side? Because now they're having to adapt in a space that they're not comfortable with. So definitely the introversion is there, but I'm thinking more from like the SC spectrum. Definitely the S. I'm thinking that, this is probably one of those situations where there was a certain process and a system in place, things kind of got out of control, and it's just like, what do we do in this case now to kind of remedy it? So that's just what I'm guessing. The processes were there, the great ideas, the innovation is there, but then now he might be literally functioning as adaptive, because now he's having to address and go to Congress and do things that he's not had to do probably before, and now has to tap into other aspects of his behavior style to basically be more results driven, really start to pick that C up. So it's like, okay, let's start looking at all the details, the rules and the regulation, because high C's are very focused on rules and regulations. So if things are kind of like, all right, we're not going to be as stringent when it comes to the rules and regulations, and that C might not be that high. So I'm thinking probably more. I'm now that I'm assessing it with the rules and regulations, you might see him more in that S spectrum versus the C, but now he's having to navigate in the season where he has to make adjustments because of the needs of the consumers, those within his organization that have had complaints, and then also the consumer on the outside that is like, okay, we need you to make some changes because it's becoming not necessarily a space where it's more about community. It seems like it's becoming more divisive. But again, that's in the eye of the beholder, because the AI, the artificial intelligence, has been created for you to think that what's going on. But in reality, is really Facebook like that? And again, that's one of those things where the AI has made you think that it looks one way, but it might really not be. So that's the unfortunate side of it. Like, they might be trying to do everything possible, but they have lost control, and now they're trying to remedy it.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. That's a great point, because if the AI has more control and not one single individual knows everything about it, there's only so much they can do other than stop it and start over. And we see that they're making changes. There's some things to point out in Facebook groups now. I was having a little not a back and forth because we were agreeing, but another individual that runs her own group, she was talking about the new features Facebook is adding in group moderation, so you can auto decline posts, you can auto, flag or delete posts, and they never go through. You don't have to do that. The issue with auto is the AI hasn't reached a level yet where it can infer intention. It just looks at keywords. So you may put a word there that you intended for something else, and it picked it up just the word and it deletes it, and you can lose valuable content. And I know that gets more in the technical side of things, but while we're keeping an open mind, like Aisha was saying, we see one thing, what Facebook projects to us, but Facebook is really projecting to us our own bias. It's feeding us information and content from the way we actually want to see it. It agrees with us. It reinforces us. It helps us in our belief system. And it takes some sitting down and looking in the mirror to say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to keep an open mind about tools, people, individuals, situations, all of these things, so I can move differently in a different direction. Now, Corey isn't here, but my man could probably work that in some team engagement right now, because as a leader, when you're dealing with teams, you often look at that individual on that external and you make a decision or a judgment not knowing their internal, not knowing what's going on in their thought process, their mind, not seeing everything. And that bias comes out. Well, I see that these people or certain people are always this way. This person must be that way. And maybe they're not. Maybe they had said something and it just came out wrong, or, but we have our biases. So I like that coming to technology and AI. Let's make sure that we're looking at it to gain the larger picture and not get trapped in just what we think, and not always just letting what we think be the end all be all. Actually being open minded. As a leader, you're going to have to do that with your clients, with your teams, with everyone you interface with, and it'll make you stronger as a business leader. Now, as we get ready to close, what do you think, Aisha? Rise or fall for Facebook?
I don't think that they're gonna fall. I think that they're in a season where they're having to make adjustments. And again, I mean, just again, as we're talking about the AI, I love the highlight of we're being fed our bias. We're being fed what we're, again, it just depends on where you are, what your worldview is like. You know, one of the things that I did recently, I've been talking about the leadership worldview and how our worldview is shaped by our experiences, is shaped by our surroundings, our upbringings. That's one of the things I talked about recently. And we need to have a level of awareness as leaders, as CEOs, as business business minded individuals, to really make sure that we're constantly assessing our worldview. How do I see the world? How I see my organization, my team? How do I see myself? Is it true or false? And is it true solely based off of the information that I have? Because again, we have these platforms that would only solely show us the things that are catered to our bias, that are happening unconsciously. We're clicking places, we're looking at things that we're not even realize. We're moving on autopilot by what's in our psyche and what's embedded behind there. But once you have that level of awareness and you're really self-assessing as a leader, what are you going to do to start exposing yourself to other things? The interesting part is that when I really start assessing my timeline and what I'm seeing, I see both sides, even from the political aspect. Why? It's because I have opened myself up to different perspectives. I'm around, I have a vast array of different type of people that I've connected with from the military. Again, the military is probably the most diverse place I've been in. So I have friends that are in those spaces. They have different views. I work in spaces with people who have different views. So I'm seeing both sides. I'm seeing both perspectives right now with everything that's going on. So as a leader, as someone that's creating a business, as somebody that is trying to get to the C-suite, or maybe you are constantly self-assess and identify what your bias is, and go through that process to start to unlearn some things that might not be healthy and learn new things, and exposing yourself to more. And then you'll have a bit more control of how you show up in the world. And essentially you'll have more control of what social media is doing, because now the AI is like, okay, this person went from watching this to this. They're like all over the place. I don't truly have control of what they like. So that's the thing. I think that Facebook will continue to fall. I think that they have created something that has become a staple, again, because there's still the good side of it. You still can connect with family members. You can still connect with people all over the world. I mean, a lot of the things that is rolling out, I think, are pretty dope. It's great. But as the consumer, as the person that works there, as the person that is on the other side of it, I want you to always continue to self-assess and find ways to assess your clientele, assess yourself, assess how you're doing things, to make sure that you are on the healthier sides, and you're being ethical versus being manipulative or doing things that could potentially harm other people. Because as business leaders, we don't want to do that. We want people to walk away with great experiences versus negative ones. So at least control what you can control. But definitely, I think Facebook will continue to rise. They are a staple in the world. So yeah, that's my view on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that unless something drastic happened, and it would have to come from a governmental body, they would have to break them up. They would have to say, "Hey, look, you you obtained or purchased these companies under false pretenses. Give them back, sell them, terminate them, whatever." Only that will bring about a fall for Facebook. Other than that, they will continue to. And you know what? This might be harsh, and people might not like it. Humans, and it's proven scientifically, psych- psychologically, we're intellectually lazy. Just a fact. Don't take it wrong. We all are. We depend on our senses and our subconscious to drive us through life. And we're almost on autopilot. Even if you think you're consciously making a lot of decisions, you really aren't. And if you want to learn more about that, go and just study behavioral economics. It talks about decision making, it talks about that process. So, Facebook isn't going anywhere, because even for the negative things that happen, people will still go there to see those things that they want to see, and Facebook will feed you that. So, for instance, most people probably don't see the negative things that are happening, and I can see it because of my friends, because of, like Aisha said, the diversiveness in my friends, the how many different groups I have. I don't delete people. I see people all the time go in and they say, "Oh, that person said something, I didn't like it." Or, for instance, the Black Lives Matter thing. If you don't agree with Black Lives Matters, I'm deleting you off my Facebook page. I've seen several people post that. I don't subscribe to deleting people who don't agree with me. I want to know your level of disagreement. I want to know your perspective. I don't have to dive into it. I don't have to live in it. If you like this and I don't like this, that could be just we don't like the same thing, but that doesn't mean that as a person I'm going to just ignore your opinion. So when people do that, when you circle your friends to only people that agree with what you agree with, when you look on Facebook, it's only going to show you that information. You're not going to see the other part. So I think Facebook will continue to rise because the algorithm works in their favor. They're only going to show people what they want to see anyway. So people don't see that negative side that we're talking about. They don't see it. And so since we're intellectually lazy, we're just going to keep going on the status quo. Facebook is going to continue to build. No one is going to, other than government, no one, I don't think consumers are going to leave. I don't even think if they start charging people, people are going to leave. Like you said, it's become a staple in our society, in the world, for people to connect, and that's what people see. I want to be on Facebook so I can see what's going on, what's in the news, what she doing over at her house, what he doing at his house, who driving around here. People want that. They want to see that, and I think that's what will continue to help them rise. Any closing remarks, Aisha?
No, I mean, you hit it on the nose. And again, I just want to leave with us as being business leaders out there. Do your part. I mean, you can only control what you can control. So take these lessons and take this series as a way for you to implement a lot of things within how you do business, how you lead. And so it allows you to kind of expand your thinking and do things in a different way. And yes, you might not reach everybody. There's still going to be hurdles. There's still going to be fall seasons, but at least you've taken the lessons you've learned here to say, okay, what can I do to make sure I am, again, assessing my customer experience, assessing my team member experience, so I can ensure that I am falling more on the ethical side. I'm falling more on the side where there's empathy, where there's less divisiveness. And the more you do that, the more you can really be a staple in what you do, and people are going to gravitate towards you because they see that you are truly a business about purpose, not just about the dollar.
Good, good. And remember, don't take this journey alone. Don't get to a point to where you're not understanding what you need to do next. Join us Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern for live business and leadership Q&A. Bring your questions, bring your concerns, bring your pain points. We're here to help you create an action plan. We're not just talking theory. We're not just talking about, oh, this sounds good. We're giving you practical tips, steps, hints, clues, markers, whatever you want to call them, in order to create that next action plan and to walk away being able to apply something different the next day in your business, in your leadership position, or for your team. So I just wanted to remind you guys that on our Facebook page, you can go to act lead consult, and you will see the registration link, and you'll be able to register and come on into that meeting. Again, we are here every Saturday for our Rise or Fall series, where we diagnose, we go through, we talk about, we discuss major companies and the problems they're having, because they have problems. They're not perfect. Even billionaires have issues. So we want to just discuss those. We want to bring those to the table. We want to make sure that you are aware. And then on October 26th, we're running an event where we're talking about the psychology of business communication at the Small Business and Development Center in Texas. So that link is also on our page. It's free. Make sure you register for that. So if you want to know how to communicate, if you want to know how to communicate with partners, with employees, with team members, with clients, join us on that. Make sure to just tune in, soak up this information. It's free. There's no excuse for that. No excuse for not knowing. So we have things coming up. We're working on a lot of great things at Act and Lead, because we want to give back to the community. We want to help people, and we want to see businesses grow and leaders thrive. So if that's it and that's all, in the words of our man Corey, who's not here, in the borrowed from Master P, be body.
All right, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you guys
See you
soon.
soon.